Hello, TikTok. I'm just gonna introduce myself for a minute, give people time to hop on the live. My name is Liz. I'm a life coach to parents with neurodivergent children. And if you're not familiar with that phrase, neurodivergent means that it's usually a diagnosis of like a different neurotype, right? Um, ADHD and autism are some of the ones you hear talked about the most, but there's actually lots of different types of neurodivergence. And I think a lot of people that identify with that phrase of neurodivergent, because I think if you've always felt a little bit different from others, then when you start to hear that phrase, it makes sense. Like, oh, yeah, there's something about my brain that's different from most other people's. So I have four kids. Two of my kids are diagnosed with autism, and two are diagnosed with ADHD. And so that's why I really wanted to get into coaching for parents of neurodivergent children, because when I was kind of in the thick of parenting my oldest child after he was diagnosed with autism, he was between 9 and 10. I think he was like just turned 10 when we finally got the diagnosis. And it was really hard. There were so many things that I didn't understand. Hi, Brian. So glad you're here. Thank you. There were so many things about parenting that were so hard for me. And I think everyone that has kids probably feels the same way at one time or another, where there's just so many parts of it that aren't how you expect it to be, especially if you have a kid that's neurodivergent. So I like to come onto TikTok and just share some topics that I think will be really helpful to parents that are just going through a lot of the same things that I've been through. So, what we're going to talk about today is hard behaviors. And hopefully, everyone can hear me. I'm using my AirPods because they're doing construction outside my office today. So, it's really loud outside. Hopefully this will make it better. So I'm so glad you're here. My name is Liz. I'm a life coach. I help parents of autistic and ADHD children, but really any child that you feel like you need extra help with that maybe isn't really acting the way you thought they were going to act. And what we're going to talk about today is why their hard behaviors feel so triggering. And I want to focus on that because I know a lot of parents are trying to figure out how to like just stop hard behaviors, or like get them to stop screaming, get them to stop refusing to comply, get them to go to sleep, get them to eat, get them to go to the bathroom. Like that's kind of what we would all like, right? Like a magical fairy godmother that can come and just make this all easier. And I can't give you that, but I can make it easier by helping you to understand better what's happening for you. And then I'm going to show you how you can take that understanding and actually make the situation better. So, what I wanted to start with is just validating how hard it can be. So, if you have a child that's screaming at you, that is like, for example, when my oldest was, I think 6, when he was mad at me, he would stand at the top of the stairs and just wet his pants on the carpet. And that kind of stuff as a parent can be really frustrating because not only are you like already engaged in trying to get your child to comply and do something, but now they just made a mess you have to clean up. And you could maybe want them to clean it up, but do you want the smell of pee in your house all day? Probably not, right? So there's just a lot of frustration in these difficult behaviors, like especially if you have a child that's physical and being violent, it's just feels like a real threat, right? And so our brain automatically goes to like this very high alert and reactive place. So I just want to first validate, if you're in this boat, if you're a parent that's dealing with a lot of like public behavior that just feels socially unacceptable, so you're embarrassed, it makes sense that this is so uncomfortable for you. If you're dealing with a child that's being really physical and violent, it makes sense that this feels really hard. And if you're dealing with just someone that refuses to listen, probably a lot of you have heard of pathological demand avoidance, just a child that when you ask them to do something, they will never do it, right? So you have to use all these creative ways to try to get some compliance with your child that can just be really, really tiring and feel really hard. So I want to validate that 100%. What you're experiencing is real, really hard, really tiring. So I'm hoping the things that I share today can be helpful to you. And if you have any comments or questions, you're welcome to leave them in the chat. And also, you'll see my website address there. You can always book a call if you want to talk to somebody. If you want to talk to me one-on-one and work through some of these issues that you're dealing with as a parent to an autistic or ADHD child, you can always book a free call. But what we're going to talk about now is just how you manage those feelings that you're having in those moments where the behaviors are so difficult that you just feel overwhelmed, you feel incapable, you feel angry, all those things that just make this hard thing even harder. And the thing that I really want to point out here to you is that what's happening inside you is what's causing that discomfort. It's not so much about the kid's behavior, it's what you're making it mean. So if your child's not listening and you're just making it mean like I'm not a good parent, or they don't respect me, or I haven't taught them well, or this is so embarrassing, I'm asking them to do something and they won't do it in front of all these people, they think I have no authority, or I'm not a good parent. What are you making it mean? That usually is what makes these hard behaviors so unpleasant as a parent, is that emotional burden that we're carrying in each moment. So I'm going to just give you a few examples of common things that we make behaviors mean. Like, they don't respect me, I'm failing as a mom, other people think I can't control my kid, this is how it's going to be forever. That's another one. That meaning, it's like an implied meaning. The kid isn't like, Mom, I'm going to yell and scream at you forever and I'm never going to change. It's what we're making it mean in that moment when the kid is being really difficult and we're just thinking, this is never going to change. I'm going to have to live like this forever. And just think about, like, if you're doing something really hard and you know it's going to end in 10 seconds, how much easier that is than if you don't know when it's going to end, even if the hard thing only lasts 10 seconds, either way. So what we're thinking creates a lot of the discomfort and the difficulty in the situation. And so that's what I want to just teach you a little bit about today, is understanding why these behaviors are so triggering for you. And if you have any like training in parenting a neurodivergent child, which I got some training through the schools, so that's why I know about de-escalation. I didn't know before that. So if you're like, I've never heard of de-escalation, don't feel bad. I did not know either. But basically what it is when there's like a confrontation, there are certain behaviors that you can engage in that help bring the energy level down. But then you'll notice, and I noticed this a lot with my oldest child, is that the teacher's response would not de-escalate, it would escalate the problem. And it was easier for me to see that from the outside, like watching my kid and their teachers or my kid and their therapist. But what I had to start noticing and learning was how my behaviors were escalating our encounters. And that's kind of what a trigger is. So you hear that word a lot, like triggering. So a trigger is just something that automatically jumps your emotion level from like your normal state to like an elevated state. And you'll notice, yeah, Jimmy, that's right, it's true. You'll notice that when you get into that heightened state, your responses are different. So it's harder to like bring things down and keep things managed when we're escalated already ourselves. So a couple of the common triggers that parents experience are disrespect. This was a big one for me. Judgment, like fear of the judgment of others, and fear, like worry for your kid if they're going to be safe, or if you're going to be safe, or your other kids are going to be safe. And then another big one is control, because we think that our job as a parent is to have control over the situation. And so sometimes when we feel out of control, that triggers us and we kind of jump automatically to this escalated state. And I like to think of it more like, I don't think of the triggers as much as I think of the way I'm like the thoughts I'm having. So like a disrespect thought would be like, he shouldn't talk to me like that. Or a judgment thought would be like, everyone's watching us. A fear thought would be like, what if this never gets better? So you see how like that's coming from a place of fear. Or a control trigger should be like, I should be able to handle this. I should be able to manage this. So it's like a thought that's kind of driving that emotion for us. Different kids trigger different things, and every parent has a trigger, right? So if you see someone responding to something and they're like so calm and you're like, wow, I'd be super irritated and upset and escalated by that. So that person must be able to manage this better. Every parent has their thing. Every person has their thing that kind of triggers them. And so I don't ever want you to compare yourself to other people and think just because someone's like so calm and collected in one situation that you might not be, they have something. They have something that's triggering for them. And like that doesn't make them better than you or you worse than them because they've got that one figured out and you don't. So I just want to remind you that because feeling bad about yourself as a parent and judging yourself does not help you become a better parent. And also, I'm just going to point out, understanding your triggers is never ever an excuse to not work on improving yourself. But what it really is, and it's meant to be super helpful because when you understand and notice them, you have more ability to choose how you're going to respond and how you're going to start redirecting your thinking and your emotional response. You don't have, a lot of times we can't choose that immediate response, but we can choose how we respond to that immediate response. So say, for example, I'm in a hard moment. I'm like, it's going to be like this forever. Instead of leaning into that thought, I can just answer it and be like, actually, this could just last for a minute. This could be fine. My kid could never do this again next year. This could just be a phase, right? So you have to understand that noticing the way you're thinking and the responses and the triggers, that is the first step in learning to have a more intentional response. Because until we notice, we have no power over it. So if you hate like the word trigger, I totally understand. Sometimes I hate it because I feel like someone's placing their emotional experience like on me because I have to not trigger them. But the truth is, understanding the trigger is my responsibility, and learning how to manage my response to it is my responsibility. But knowing about it is the first step. And it's okay to let other people know, like, I was super triggered. I know I escalated. Like, it's okay to share that. And it's okay to allow that to just be the truth right now. But also just remember, understanding that your kids' difficult behaviors can be triggering for you is the first step in learning how to manage your emotional experience in those moments. So, the reason this is so important is that when you don't understand those triggers and you don't pay attention to them, you're just stuck in a loop. It's just like if you've ever heard of a neuro pathway, like pathways that you create in your brain. It's like when you drive home from work. Have you ever driven home from work and you just kind of space out and you're thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow and what you're going to wear and stuff you need to get from the store? And then you get home and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember taking the turns and getting off at the exit. And like, you don't even remember that whole process of how you got home because your brain has a neural pathway of how to get home because it's done it so many times. So it's trying to conserve energy and not having to think about every little detail of that experience. We have those same neural pathways for our emotional responses. So if your child's talking back to you and you're in the habit of thinking like they're being so disrespectful and they shouldn't be, and then it escalates you because you're making that mean that you're not a good parent or that your kid is a bad kid, and then you go into that escalation, your brain, every time something like that happens, it's just going to go the pathway that it knows. So what you need, what is super helpful, what a coach does is helping you to recognize what your triggers are, interrupting them, and creating new neural pathways so that you can have a different experience, and I would say a much better experience, like not being kind of out of control of the car and being able to steer the car where you want to go. So if you're noticing, like when I was talking about kids and like getting in a fight with their teacher or whatever, or a conflict with their teacher, and you would just watch it escalate, like it never worked out well. You could always kind of go back in time and see, like if the teacher would have done this, and I'm using the teacher example because I think sometimes it's easier for us to see how these interactions play out more as an observer than when we're in them because the emotions kind of take over. So in my example of watching like my kids' teachers get into these like kind of, I don't even know what, like an argument or whatever, and the teacher is like doing this and you can't do that and like getting in my son's face, and I actually have a video of this that the school sent me, and I could see the teacher, I could see the situation getting more and more escalated, like my son getting more like anxious and defiant, and the teacher wanting more control. And as an outside observer, I can see like if the teacher had brought an energy that was calmer and more collected, that whole interaction could have just stayed here, and it could have been a lot shorter and a lot simpler. But when the teacher is all caught up, and like I said, I do this all the time. I'm only using this example because sometimes it's easier to understand from the outside. So what I can see is like the teacher wasn't being creative. The teacher wasn't being understanding to the child. The teacher was just limiting their toolbox of ways to resolve the problem. Because yes, like Crump 99999 said, like they were totally escalated. Yep. Okay. So why this is so important is, like I was saying, you kind of get stuck in these loops of how you respond. So you might react fast, you might raise your voice, you might get harsh or shut down and feel guilty afterwards. So what you're trying to do is figure out how to get out of this negative loop of my kid did this behavior that was made me feel like I was out of control, or made me feel like they were disrespectful, or whatever your trigger is. And then you're like have to kind of have an emergency response. So you want to learn how to keep yourself in a more logical place, because that's where you can access patience and understanding. And yes, exactly. That's right, Cassie. They really didn't. And they were really good people. This was quite a long time ago, but she said they didn't have any sun training. Yeah, they did not have sun training, and it was disappointing. Nobody was harmed, but when you learn and you understand about it, you know that the way we respond makes that whole interaction so different. And so that's why I wanted to come and talk about this topic, because we can't control how our kids are going to behave. They have their own brains, they have their own needs, their own wants, their own abilities, their own capacity from day to day. Like, I'm sure we've all experienced this, that a kid that can be totally reasonable one day can be so difficult the next day because they have a tag or something in their shirt bothering them, or they didn't get enough sleep, or they have like a little toothache, or there's just so many things going on. You're so welcome, Cassie. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you. So there's just so many things happening for our child that we can't control, right? Like, we love them, we want to help them do their best, but we can't manage their behavior all the time, because they're an autonomous individual who's making choices, and they're having to manage what their experience is in every moment. But what we can do as a parent is pay attention to the thoughts we're having and how those thoughts are driving our behavior, our side of the interaction, right? Because if you have one person that's escalating and escalating, and then you have another person that's staying here, the net total of like how crazy this interaction can go is always going to be limited by the person that can stay calm. And so that is what I want to offer you today, is ways that you can stay calmer in these interactions that feel triggering and feel really difficult. So one thing you can ask yourself is, first of all, just pay attention to like what emotions kind of get you escalated. And when you're having a hard time with your kid, just asking yourself, like, what am I feeling right now that I don't like? And if this doesn't make sense to you, I'm going to give you a way to kind of notice it. So, have you ever had a day where you just are in the best mood and like the kids drop cereal all over the floor and you're just like, oh, no big deal, I'll sweep it up? And someone like wets their pants and you're just like, of course you did, and you clean it up. And then just all these things that are frustrating and annoying as a parent are happening. And you just roll with it because you're in a state where your emotions are managed. Like, whatever you're thinking, you're not making all of these things mean that like you're going to be cleaning up cereal every day for the rest of your life, or that you're going to be cleaning up pee all day, every day. Like, there's something going on for you. And I notice this for myself. Like, sometimes I'm just in a really good mood and I can handle everything, and other days I'm not. And so what you can learn, a skill that you can learn, is knowing how to intentionally create that mood. And it doesn't even have to be a good mood. It's just a way of thinking that helps you interrupt those negative cycles so that you can choose more intentionally how you want to respond. And you'll always see that that affects the way your kid responds. So, what we all really want, I think, is just to have a more enjoyable interaction with our kids and to feel more connected and less like escalated and inflamed. So, understanding how to manage our side of every interaction does have a really positive influence and benefit on our kids. Oh, yeah, that's a good one, Cassie. She says, I say I get to instead of I have to. And that's like such a good example, right? Because instead of feeling like you have to do something, you're using a mindset that feels empowering and enjoyable. That's such a great example. So another one, so you can ask yourself, what am I making this mean? Sorry, I'm trying to look at the things, but not all the comments make sense. Sorry, guys. But if it does, I will definitely share it. So what am I making this mean right now? Like, am I making it mean that I'm doing something wrong? Because that doesn't feel good, right? So we're automatically going to go in that escalated state. Am I making this mean there's something wrong with my kid? That doesn't feel good, right? Thinking there's something wrong with them feels super serious. It's going to escalate us. Am I thinking like they're never going to change? Like that doesn't feel very hopeful. Like what are the things we're thinking that are creating this negative emotion that's leading to this implosion? The next is separating your child from your identity. So as parents, we get really locked into like not just I made a mistake or like I'm having a hard moment as a parent. It's like I'm a bad parent. We jump right to that. And that feels really heavy and it doesn't help us to show up well. And so that was another way that you can kind of de-escalate yourself is just being really compassionate. Like, okay, I'm having a hard moment. I'm not showing at my best here, right? And it just takes the pressure off instead of when we're like, I'm a horrible parent, and we just kind of spin out of control. It's like pouring gasoline on the fire. So just allowing us to separate this moment, the child's behavior from our identity as a parent just makes it all feel less dramatic. And then we have more power to access like the logic and the problem solving and the creativity and the patience and the love, the things that connect us instead of disconnecting us. Okay. And then you're going to love this one regulating ourselves. So, okay, let's see. Cassie says, oh, mom is overstimulated now and I take 5 minutes. So, this is just what I was going into like regulating. So, what Cassie's saying is that when she gets worked up like that, she just tells her child, I'm overstimulated. I need 5 minutes. Not only is this a great lesson for your child to see that it's perfectly acceptable to take a minute to regulate yourself, but when mom's regulated, she can show up with more ability to parent the way she wants to parent and not just in the reactivity and just, feeding into this once again, like an implosion of behaviors. So, yeah, so taking deep breaths, which, sorry, I get talking really fast and I run out of breath. So taking a deep breath in and then exhaling longer than you inhale, that just has an automatic like downshift of your nervous system. Some people like to go into a quiet room, or if you have a child, you've probably noticed that sometimes just like running their hands underwater can just calm their nervous system down, or if they have like a soft blanket, like you have a nervous system just like your child does. And just like they need help regulating theirs, you need to take the time to regulate yours. So pay attention to what things help you calm down, right? I'm the same. I just used to tell my kids, Mom's going to put herself in timeout for a minute. And it was really helpful. It just shows the child that we don't have to deal with everything when we're all amped up, that we can take a minute. Like our relationship is strong enough that we can come back and take care of this later. So remember, what am I making this mean? Separate your child's behavior from your identity. Regulate yourself before you respond. And then the most important part is choosing who you want to be. So when you've had that moment to calm yourself down, to like get your head a little bit clear, think about who do I want to be in this moment? and let that be the energy that fuels your interaction with your child instead of that panic, anxious, triggered energy, the intentional, loving energy that you want to bring to your interactions. And that energy doesn't have to be perfect, right? Because we trust the intention that we have. And so it doesn't have to be perfect, but we trust that when we're coming from a place of love and like willingness to problem solve and to work together for a solution, like we can trust that that feels good to us and to the child. And that promotes connection and trust and working together with our kid instead of like shaming and blaming and just a continued cycle of frustration and irritation, which I think is something that matters to all of us. So, just a key takeaway from this segment is that your power is not in controlling your child, it's in how you show up. And you have the ability to manage that. And I don't ever want to make someone feel bad for the way they initially respond to something, because we do just have these old ingrained neural pathways that are going to show up, and that's okay. But are we noticing them? Are we paying attention to them? And are we trying to interrupt them, trying to shift our energy into something that's more positive and more helpful? So for me, I thought that parents were supposed to be in charge of everything and that it was like training your child, like it's my job to train him to be well behaved and stuff like that. And so I got very triggered when I felt out of control because I made it mean that I wasn't a good parent. So that would like ramp up my energy, and then I would be like, you have to stop that now. So then I was making it mean like my kid's going to be bad forever because I've lost control. And it would just escalate and escalate and escalate. So noticing that in myself and being able to respond with like, this is just a moment. This isn't how it's going to be forever. Or like, I don't have to be in control of everything he does. These are his choices. I get to choose how I'm going to show up now. It just kind of kept the energy calmer, more regulated, and allowed me to make more intentional decisions about how I wanted to handle each interaction and each situation. And if you want help practicing this in your own real life situations, you can see that. That's my website. You can book a free one-on-one call there. It's also at the link in my bio. Okay, so this is the last part. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to talk about is an identity shift. And this is, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but just not thinking that you're a bad mom when things don't go well. Because the truth is that blaming ourselves and shaming ourselves does not ever help us become better. We have sort of like a long history of thinking that if we say like, you did such a bad job, you need to do better, you were horrible at that, that's going to make us do better in the future. And when you think about it, would you talk to your kid like that? Would you tell your kid like, oh, you were so terrible at that? You might, some people might have a bad habit of doing those things, but yeah, Cassie's like, never. Yeah, it's just not even, it's not natural to me. There might be some people that's how they were parented, and so they do respond that way. But I guarantee you that if they do, they know it doesn't help their kids do better. It's just a really bad habit. And it's the same for how you treat yourself and how you respond to your own behaviors, right? So if you're noticing your triggers, you're noticing some of these bad habits, I would just remind you that you're not a bad mom. You just have these old habits or old ways of responding that make sense. Like you've learned them for some reason. They've helped you, they've protected you. They came about for a reason, but you weren't aware of how they were showing up for you. You weren't in control of them, right? They just developed as a response to whatever was happening for you. And so you didn't do anything wrong by having these triggers or having these behaviors. But now that you understand more about them, you have more ability to change them. And that is like where your greatest strength is as a parent. It's not in showing up perfectly every day and knowing how to do everything, right? We don't expect our kids to know how to do everything and to be perfect little humans as they grow up. We expect them to make mistakes. We expect them to need help. We expect that mistakes are part of the process of them learning and growing. And so having that same attitude towards ourselves is going to actually be more helpful in developing the skills and habits that we would like to have as parents. So just remember that. And also remember that this isn't something that you just know, right? Like a lot of our behaviors and our reactions are just kind of like street survival skills that we picked up in whatever environments we've lived in. And nobody sat down and taught us like how to process our emotions in a healthy way. I mean, maybe some kids did. I didn't. And um, we didn't have a lot of training on like how to be intentional with our responses and how to promote connection with our children, with these people that we're responsible for, that we're trying to keep alive and help be good people. And so it makes sense that there would be some mistakes and some time and some energy required to help us develop these skills. Okay. Yeah, it's been a struggle. Oh, Domorado 92. I totally understand. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering your name. I am not diagnosed with ADHD, but I'm 99.9% sure I have ADHD. And it does make it hard. And I've shared this actually on some of my other lives, but when I first started to realize that my kids were neurodivergent, I felt really guilty that I was their mom because I'm like very spontaneous and I like a lot of things going on at once and I love change. I was always like wanting to move and do something different. And my kids would be like, "What are we doing today?" And my mother-in-law would come visit and she's neurodivergent as well. And she loves routine. And she would come and she would just like stay with us for a week and she would want to do the same thing every day. So she'd wake up and be like, "Okay, let's make the kids breakfast. And then we'll play memory. And then we'll go for a walk to the park. And then we'll come home and we'll make ham sandwiches. And then we'll go for a nap. We'll have a nap. And then we'll watch the show. And then we'll play with these blocks." This is how every day was. And I felt like she should be their mom because they loved it. They loved knowing what was going to come next. They loved the routine of it. And I remember one night she was visiting and I'm walking through Walmart with my grocery cart, just thinking like, why am I these kids' mom? Like, this is not my personality at all. Yeah, she said she needs structure and routine, but I cannot for the life of me maintain it. I totally understand. So listen to the end of this story is I was walking through Walmart thinking like, I'm the wrong mom for these kids. And it just came to me clear as day. Like, you're the perfect mom for these kids. They need both. They need you. They need your imperfection because they're living in a real world that's not made just for them. So learning how to live with someone that loves them and is going to try their very best to take care of them and meet their needs to the best of my ability, but I'm going to be really imperfect at it. That is the best thing for them. And so I would just remind you that when you feel like you don't know what to do with your kids, like that's part of the gift for your kids is not knowing what to do because you're going to look for answers. You're going to be creative. You're going to show them that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not know what to do. And you're going to learn and you're going to grow with them. And if you want help doing that, you can book a call and I'd be happy to help you. But I just want to encourage you and remind you all that you're doing a great job. Even in your worst moment, we are not defined by our worst moments. Thank goodness. And there's always forgiveness available. There's always the ability to change. And you do have the ability to feel good and have a good life, even if your kids' behaviors are really hard. And that starts by learning to manage your emotions and your responses. And not only will that feel better for you as a parent, it will feel better to your kids too. Okay, let's see, Domrado. My youngest bangs his head on the floor when frustrated. He's in OT. My oldest for sure has ADHD. Yeah, that is hard because you're worried about him getting hurt, right? So I don't know if you were here in the very beginning, but what you want to pay attention to is that when he's banging his head on the floor, what are you thinking? What are you making it mean? Are you making it mean like he's going to be brain dead? And I'm going to go to extremes to just show you the difference. But if you're making it mean that something really dramatic, then your feelings are going to ramp up. And instead of being like able to kind of channel your problem solving and your thoughtfulness and your patience, you're going to go into like emergency reaction mode, which most of the time, like that mode is really, really helpful when there's an emergency. But our brain just wants to go there all the time. And it creates a lot of problems for us. So just notice, like, am I making this mean something that's like more dramatic than what it is? And notice that. And so start learning ways to support your mental state in those moments. Oh, yeah. So she usually says, hey, we love ourselves. That looks like it hurts. So, yeah, you have some good strategies, it looks like. So, yeah, if you just find yourself, I'm just going to end kind of on this. If you find yourself escalating a situation because you're making it mean like it's never going to stop, or you're out of control, or your kid is bad, or you're a bad parent, and you just remind yourself like that isn't true, right? We never know. We don't know what the future holds. And when we allow ourselves to get into like all that worry and panic, we just cut ourselves off from our greatest gifts as parents, which is our patience, our love, our compassion, our creativity, and our desire and willingness to connect with our kids. That's when we show up with our best parenting. So, yeah, she says she does sometimes worry because we don't go out in public often due to his sensory issues. That makes sense. So if I were coaching you right now, I would talk about like, are you worried about how other people perceive you? Are you worried about his safety? And to take a look at like what emotions are driving your decisions with your child, because the emotions, I like to think of our emotions as the fuel for our life, right? So when we're always worried, are we limiting some of the experiences that might be really good for our child? Like, are we making decisions based off things that haven't ever really happened? So we're suffering before the bad things have happened, right? Which for some people, that's how they really want to live, and that's okay. But for me, I would rather live in like feeling hopeful and some cautious optimism. So paying attention to what emotions are driving your behaviors. And if you're finding like, I don't really like how this is working out for us, then thinking like, how can I cultivate a different emotion, something that leads me where I want to go? So if that didn't make sense, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to just cram a little bit in here at the end. I've got to go, but thank you guys so much for showing up to this live. I would love to chat more. If you want to book a consult at lizcovington.com, or send me a message if you have more questions. Yes, I do see you.